So we will try to understand what is good governance. See, good governance, the term in fact is something which is very much ideal. It is something which may not be that practical, but we can move very much close to the good governance. So that is the scope. It is not something which can be practical. Why? Because it is an utopian concept. Say, for example, it is even not a Herculean task. It is an utopian concept. So it is practically not possible for us to, in fact, move very much resemblance or to have very much resemblance towards a good governance. In fact, we may be moving towards a good governance, but practically it is not possible to have a good governance. So we will try to understand what is good governance first. The manner in which, the manner in which the power is exercised for the management of countries' economic and social resources for development is, what do you mean by good governance? Okay, what is good governance? The manner in which the power is exercised by or for the management of countries' economic and social resources for the development. So ultimately, the aim is development. Okay, the aim is development. Fine, the aim is development, and for the development, there should be the management of social and economic resources, isn't it? The management of social and economic resources are very, very crucial. For what? For the development. And the management of social and economic resources for upholding the spirit of development of the society, you will have to follow a specific manner. And this is what do you mean by good governance? Okay. So good governance would be that manner in which development needs to be met by successfully managing the social and economic resources. So the manner in which the management of social and economic resources are taken forward for the purpose of achievement of development is what do you mean by good governance. So what all kind of things needs to be concentrated for upholding the spirit of good governance? Say, for example, if I give you examples, good governance means the government should be transparent. The government should not be opaque. Everything should be transparent for the public. There should be, say, for example, obedience of the rule of law. Okay, such kind of things are even part of the good governance. The government should be accountable, isn't it? So these kind of features, we will talk about all those features also. These kind of features are actually what do you need to understand in relation to good governance. So the manner in which the power is exercised for the management of countries' economic and social resources for development is what is good governance. Now, in simple terms, it is a model of governance. Okay, it is a model of governance where the transparency, accountability, responsibility, etc. will be having sufficient space in that particular model. Okay, so if this is a model of governance, this is good governance model. Okay, good governance model means you would have heard about the pumpkin model, isn't it? The watermelon model. Okay, if such kind of a model can be compared with a good governance model, there would be element of transparency, there would be element of rule of law, there should be element of accountability, there should be element of responsibility, and so forth and so forth. Okay, so this is such a kind of model of governance. Say, for example, your government provides for the right to information, isn't it? The MGNREGA, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act is, in fact, all these things are part of what? part of the good government or good governance. Sir, why, sir? How MGNREGA becomes part of the good governance? Sir, MGNREGA is considering the poor people to be provided with an employment, isn't it? Minimum 100 days of employment. Can you demand that you needs to be provided with a salary of or the payment of what your friend is getting from Canada or New Zealand? No, it is best with the capacity of the state. So the state would be providing or considering those people who are economically backward. Okay, so RTI, MGNREGA, all these things are in fact examples for India being implementing a good governance model. Fine. Now, what are the principles? So first we will try to just go through the principles. Number one is accountable. The government needs to be accountable, or the governance needs to be accountable. It needs to be transparent. It needs to be responsive, equitable and inclusive. Consequences, it is consensus oriented, participatory, rule of law, and effective and efficient. Okay, that means the government as well as the civil society organizations. Okay, the government plus the civil society organizations would be contributing to the governance, and this particular process needs to be transparent, accountable, responsive, equitable, inclusive, efficient, effective. It should be following the rule of law. It should be consensus oriented. It should be participatory. All these things will be contributing to the good governance. So that is the reason why we say that is an ideal concept. It is something which cannot be fully achieved, but we can move very much close to that perfection. It is something which is beyond our achievement. Of course, that is what is practical, but we can move to that close proximity of good governance. Okay, so this is what is in fact the idea of good governance, and the definition which I have told earlier was coined by the World Bank. Okay, that is the manner in which the social and economic resources are used for the development of the society. That particular definition is given by the World Bank. So good governance is not an idea which has got emanated from India. In fact, we celebrate Good Governance Day. The birth anniversary of Atal Bihari Vajpayee is observed as Good Governance Day in India, isn't it? So just you should not be having that kind of misunderstanding that it is something which has got emanated from India. No, it has even got reach on a pan-global basis. Okay, it is not something which is totally concentrated within India. Fine. Now, we will take into each one of the principles of the good governance and discuss. Number one is that the governance needs to be participatory. Okay, the governance needs to be participatory. Fine, participatory. How can you make the governance participatory? Sir, it can be only be made through elections, isn't it? Maybe direct elections or indirect elections. That means the democracy that you practice may be representative or indirect, does not matter. It may be direct, even does not matter. But the people should be having that chance to take part in the election. So that is one of the feature of participatory governance. Okay, participatory government or participatory governance, you may say. So good governance says about one of the feature, that is it needs to be participatory. You might have heard about mygov.in. Mygov.in is in fact a portal in which the citizens can raise their opinion to the government. Okay, mygov.in is a citizen engagement platform in which the citizens can raise their opinion to the government. as well as the citizens are active participants, or it should be active participants in the protests and the demonstrations. They should be participants in the public debates. So this is how participatory democracy can be made effective. If the government is participatory, one of the feature of the good governance is achieved, that is participatory governance. Okay, so good governance should also be participatory in nature. How? Through elections. Can it only be through direct elections? No, it may be through indirect elections also. So there is in fact something like mygov.in which the citizens can engage actively in the governance matter. There may be protests and demonstrations, the public debates, the processions, isn't it? All those things actually contribute for the participation of the civilians, the citizens, the people of India. Why? Because they should be having that kind of a habit of remembering the government about what needs to be done and what need not be doing. Okay, so that is why we say that it needs to be participatory in nature. So the first feature is participatory. The second one, so it should be consensus oriented. Okay, it should be consensus oriented. Now, what do you mean by consensus oriented? It means, suppose if there is a new law being enacted, or suppose if the government, in fact, is trying to put forward a new law, the government will have to seek for the consultation at a maximum possible level. All the different stakeholders from different parts of the country, even outside the country, should also be contributing their opinion towards how the law can be most effective, how the law can be enacted effectively for the welfare of the people. So that is what is the demand, isn't it? So the welfare of the people needs to be achieved, taking consultations from all the stakeholders of that particular matter. And that is why we say that the governance needs to be consensus oriented. So get the consultations from all over, all over. Okay. And even after the legislative inputs, okay, after the legislative inputs, you may seek the opinion of the people of India. That is how the law which has got enacted is working. You might have heard about this particular program of the central government, that is Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, isn't it? Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra. And in Kerala, there was another problem, that is, another program which was named as Nava Kerala Sadas, isn't it? Nava Kerala Sadas. And what does this say? These say that the people, the leaders, the rulers, the government is going to the people. They meet the people in their residence, in their doorstep, and they are seeking the opinion from the people of that particular country or the state. What a wonderful way of governance this is, isn't it? It is something which is very much effective. Why? Because the people, they are in fact incapable to travel to Trivandrum or Delhi to meet the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister. Instead, the government will be coming to your doorstep to seek the opinion from you regarding how does the government needs to be working for the welfare of your community, your family, your household, your religion, your society. That needs to be asked to the people. So that is the importance of this kind of programs. Okay, so they should be talking to the beneficiaries and even non-beneficiaries. Why was there a lacking? Why the scheme was not being utilized by that community or that individual? Everything needs to be aware, or everything needs to be understood by the government so that they can work upon it. Okay, so this is what do you mean by consensus oriented governance. The next one is accountability. Okay, accountability part. So within the executive itself, our constitution provides for an accountability part, that is Comptroller and Auditor General of India, isn't it? Within the constitution itself, under article number 148 to 151, the Constitution provides for an office, that is Comptroller and Auditor General of India. And what is his responsibility? The responsibility of Comptroller and Auditor General of India is to make the government accountable, isn't it? To make the government accountable. So that is, in fact, contributing to the good governance model, definitely. At the same time, the people should also be provided with the information. So that is the reason why the Right to Information Act of 2005 has got enacted. Why? Because the right to life means, or the right to freedom of speech and expression means, you should be having the right to information. So without having information, how can you exercise freedom of speech and expression? So you should be provided with genuine information regarding how the governance is conducted. Are you understanding this? How the governance, you should be having that access to even public records, my dear friends. Public records. What is happening inside the government? You will be having that access through filing an RTI, and you will be having the credible information regarding why that particular project is lagging, why that particular project is not being completed in the pace expected. All those kind of reasons would be provided for you, and you can decide on the basis of such kind of authentic information how would you rate the government. And rating the government is what is democracy, is what is election, is what is dissent. So democracy is always including dissent in itself also. I hope you are getting the idea. So that is the importance of RTI. So you have an executive, that is CAG, to keep the government accountable. You have the people to keep the government accountable. That is, with the RTI, the government will understand that, oh my dear friends, the people, they are very much vigilant. They are always keeping a check on what exactly me or the government is doing and not doing. So I will have to perform, otherwise they will rate me. They are in fact working as a 24-hour CCTV camera, isn't it? So that is exactly what is the importance of the Right to Information Act of 2005. The accountability may be vertical or horizontal accountability also. Now, what do you mean by vertical accountability? Vertical accountability means, this is the thing, okay? Vertical accountability means the government is made accountable by the citizens of India. This is what do you mean by, or this is how is it be done, is through elections. Okay, elections. So this is what is vertical accountability. Okay, vertical accountability. As well as there is a horizontal accountability also. That is the legislature. That is the legislature, be it the parliament or the state legislature, will be asking, keep on asking questions to the government regarding what kind of problems are you facing within the government. So that kind of questions will be asked frequently and will be decided. So that is what do you mean by horizontal accountability. So accountability means it needs to be horizontal as well as vertical. Fine. So the responsibility as well as the elections. Responsibility matter, that is the executive is responsible to the legislature. So this is executive, this is legislature. Executive is responsible to the legislature. This is what do you mean by horizontal accountability. And the government is responsible to the citizens of India. This is what do you mean by vertical accountability. So accountability is in fact questioning the executive. To question the executive, to question the executive or to rate the executive, you should be provided with a sufficient level of information. The sufficient information will contribute to effective questioning of the government. Okay, so this is what you need to understand regarding the third feature, that is accountability. So number one was participatory, number two was consensus oriented, number three is accountability. Hope this is clear for you. Number four, okay, number four is transparency. and what you need to, or what will be your understanding about transparency, or what is your understanding about transparency? Hmm? What is your understanding about transparency? It's very simple. Transparency means, okay, transparency means, yeah, transparency means enough information needs to be provided to the public. Okay, enough information needs to be provided to the public. Sir, what do you mean by transparency then? Sir, it should be something which is understandable for the public. Okay, understandable for the public. Sir, RTI gives the information, isn't it? And that is coming under the category of accountability. Yes, my dear friends, RTI comes under the category of accountability. Sorry. Now, transparency means that while you file an RTI, you will be provided with some information. These information needs to be very much clear for you, isn't it? It should be crystal clear for you. It should be in simple language. It should not be more technical. Why? Because all are not just scholars, isn't it? The citizens of India, the poor people, they are not scholars. So if they feel that once they file the RTA and they get the information and they feel that, sir, I get the information, but this information is something which I am not understanding, isn't it? There is no use of getting me such kind of information because I am not understanding anything. If that is the case, then what is the purpose of getting such information, isn't it? So enough information needs to be provided in very much legitimate manner, understandable manner. This is what is transparency. Getting it? This is what do you mean by transparency. So even the element of RTI will contribute to transparency. Why? Because RTI is very much crucial in accountability as well as in transparency regard. Fine. As well as the RTI Act of 2005 says that the government departments, the government organizations should provide suo motu disclosure of information. Okay. Suo motu disclosure of information. And what do you mean by the suo motu disclosure? Suo motu disclosure means there won't be, say, for example, suppose if you need to understand the name as well as the qualification or those kind of things of the election commissioners, the chief election commissioners, the other election commissioners, is it very much need or is it necessary that you will have to file an RTI? No, my dear friends, it is not a necessity. You will be having such kind of information from the official website of the Election Commission of India, isn't it? So that is what is suo motu disclosure of information. Even if you have not been filing an RTI, you should be provided with that information. So it is easily accessible, isn't it? Simple language, easily accessible. Authentic information, legitimate information needs to be given. So this is what is the idea of suo motu disclosure of information, RTI, as well as even the citizens charter, the entitlement of the services that the government departments provide. So this is a kind of responsibility. This is a kind of transparency that what all kind of services that particular institute provides for you. This is in fact what you need to understand regarding the transparency matter. So number one, participatory. Number two, consensus oriented. Number three was accountability. Number four is transparency part. Okay. The next one is responsibility. Okay. Responsibility. The most important feature of good governance is responsibility. Sir, what do you mean by responsibility? Sir, responsibility means, sir, basically there is a feeling that the government services are very much flexible in nature, isn't it? The officers are not provided the targets, so they will feel that it is not a necessity to complete the work in a set period of time. Why? Because they would be provided with a salary anyway. Then they would be provided with a salary. Now, what is the purpose of completing the targets or completing the work within the specified period of time, isn't it? So that kind of flexibility can make the officers more lazy. Are you getting this? So that kind of flexibility can make the officers more lazy. The lazy bureaucracy can retard the growth of the country, isn't it? So that would not be, in fact, having a model of good governance. Okay, that would not be regarded as a feature of good governance. So it should be responsive, responsible. How can you make these officers responsible? Sir, by enacting legislations like the Right to Services Act, which shall impose a monetary penalty from the salary of that particular officer in case if he fails to exercise the duty. So this is what is the Right to Services Act provides for. Okay, Right to Services Act provides for. Say, for example, you approaches a government organization or the government of Kerala or the government of India, and you would be provided with a certificate, or you know that the certificate needs to be provided within 10 or 20 days. And even beyond that, you are not provided with the certificate. Under the Right to Services Act, there will be some provisions which provides for the penalty from. So where will the service, I mean, where will the compensation come from? The compensation will come from the salary of that particular concerned officer who was unnecessarily delaying your application. Are you getting this? So this is what is responsibility. So number one, we were discussing about participatory. Okay, participatory. So these principles are very, very important. So number one was participatory. Number two was transparency. Transparency. Number three was responsibility. Okay, responsibility. So one was participatory, two was transparency, three was responsibility, four was consensus oriented, five was accountability, isn't it? Accountability. So these are the features which we have discussed until now. Participatory, transparency, responsibility, consensus oriented, as well as accountability. Now, equitable and inclusive. Okay, equitable and inclusive. What do you mean by equitable? How will you understand equitable, or what is the difference between equity and equality? Okay, what is the difference between equity and equality? Equity and equality. What is the difference? See, equity means, or let me tell you, equality means, say for example, equality means, suppose I have 100 rupees. Okay, 100 rupees. Okay, 100 rupees. And there is a rich man, there is a poor man. I give 50-50 to each of them. This is what do you mean by equality. Okay, this is what do you mean by equality. That is, without considering the situation of the person or the community standing in front, we are applying the principle of equality. All are equal before the law. This is what do you mean by equality. Now, is equality a part of good governance? No, my dear friends, that is not the predominant consideration. The predominant consideration is not equality, it is equity. And what do you mean by equity? Say, for example, there is a rich man, poor man. Okay, poor man. So the rich man would not be wanting this money. The poor man would be having a need of this money. Say, for example, we are just giving rupees 20 to the rich man and 80 to the poor. This is what do you mean by equity? Okay, equity. So this is in a way we are considering the situation of a person in front of us. We are giving that, in fact, special treatment for those persons who are very much necessity in need. Okay, those persons who are very much, in fact, having that need of necessity, that person is provided with the sufficient special attention. And this is what is the idea and the difference between equity and equality. So is it the equality that the governance will have to be following? No. Equality means that, sir, your governance will be considering, say, for example, a rich man, a corporate person, as well as a poor man who is living in the slum, who does not have even a piece of land. He does not have even a house to stay, to reside. That person, as well as a business tycoon, the richest person in the country, being served in the same manner. So that is highly backward, highly uncivilized. That is not, in fact, the feature of good governance. The feature of good governance is equity. Equity. Equity will contribute to inclusiveness, isn't it? Inclusiveness, that you are making this particular person also part of this large society, isn't it? You are welcoming these persons also as part of the society. So this is what do you mean by equitable and inclusive. You will have to include women, you will have to include the LGBTQ community, you will have to include the children, everything, the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe, all those kind of specially special treatment needed community to be merged with the mainstream society. This is what is the idea of inclusive society or inclusivity. So the transparency, the participatory form, as well as the accountability, the responsibility, the consensus oriented, plus the governance needs to be equitable and inclusive. And that is also one of the feature of the good governance. Okay, so the governance needs to be equitable and inclusive, and that is one of the feature of the good governance. Okay, so you have a number of examples. Even the constitution itself provides for reservation, isn't it? Reservation a discrimination? No, reservation is just a kind of special treatment. Why? Because those people are very much backward, isn't it? Very much backward economically, maybe socially, educationally, very much backward. And that is the reason why we are reserving them, reserving the seats for them, reserving the seats to the local self-body elections. And now being a law is has got enacted by the parliament. The president has given the assent for the women, community, isn't it? To the elections of the Lok Sabha and the state legislative elections. So this is what is inclusivity. You are providing inclusiveness in the society. Fine. So reservation is such a kind of example for, in fact, inclusivity. Okay, inclusivity. And even reservation can also be understood as a condition of equitable or equity. Why? Because there is a special need for those people who are very much backward. There are different schemes, say, for example, PM Nari Shakti Yojana, Ayushman Bharat, isn't it? Health care insurance for those people who are very much backward, isn't it? So these are, in fact, special treatment given by the government to those people who are very much backward in the society. So this is what is equitable and inclusive. The next one is efficient and effective. Okay, efficient and effective. What does it mean? Efficient and effective means it is the best use of resources. The best use of resources, sir. The best use of resources means it is without wastage of resources. Okay, without wastage of resources. Resources should not be wasted. Wastage of resources. So this is why we say that it is efficient and effective. It should not be a waste. The resources should not be waste. So how can you make the governance efficient and effective? Okay, how can you make the governance efficient and effective? Number one is evaluation of scheme. Okay, evaluation of scheme. Sir, evaluation of scheme means suppose today we are evaluating a particular scheme, or in this year we are evaluating a particular scheme, and we are evaluating the scheme after 25 years. Is that necessary, or is that the only necessity? No, my dear friends, there should be timely evaluation of the scheme or frequent evaluation of the scheme. Okay, there shall be frequent evaluation of the scheme so that you will exactly understand what is lacking, what is in fact you are having more. Everything needs to be understood, isn't it? So that is what do you mean by frequent evaluation of scheme, as well as promoting merit. What do you mean by promoting merit? Hmm? You actually wanted the most competent and the most efficient human resources as part of your bureaucracy, isn't it? Do you want every seats to be filled on the basis of any special consideration? On the basis of nepotism, suppose you get every seats are filled in the IAS or the IPS. Is it what you wanted? No, my dear friends, it should be on the basis of efficiency. The efficient youth needs to be part of the country's governance program. Okay, so what happens in our country is that the most talented engineers, the most talented doctors, the most talented teachers, the most talented, say, for example, lawyers, they are in fact taking forward their career in a private sector. Why? Because they are more paid there, isn't it? They are more paid there. But when it comes to a government setup, they are not even paid. So the most efficient of them among them will take a decision that we will go for the private sector instead of the public sector. Why? Because it will pay only less, but the private sector will pay more. Even though the work is humongous, does not matter. Even though the work is humongous, does not matter. We will have to lead a luxurious life, isn't it? So that is the reason why the most brightest in the society, the most smartest in the society, the most efficient in the society, they would be opting for the private sector. Why? Because they are paid more, isn't it? But bureaucracy should be exactly wanting, in fact, the most efficient ones, because they are the decision makers. They are those who are supporting the government, the political government. So always try to promote the merit when it comes to the good governance. Okay. Now, pay linked to the performance. How can you make effective the governance? How can you make the governance effective? Is that you should be paid. Absolutely, there is no doubt. You should be paid regularly. Fine, you should be paid regularly. If you are regular, wonderful. That means, suppose you are a government employee. You are a government employee in the secretariat, be it the central secretariat or the state secretariat, does not matter. You should be paid, regularly paid. That is, every month end you should be paid with a salary. Does not matter. But suppose if you are not achieving what exactly needs to be done by you in that 1 month, is there a reduction in your salary in government? No. No, there is no reduction in salary because of the reason that you have not achieved the target. So it should be target based. target based payment scheme that should be enrolled. Okay, it should be target based. At the same time, it should not be exploiting the employees. Okay, it should not be exploiting the employees. Fine. So it should be target based payment scheme that should be enrolled, so that the employees will feel that, okay, fine, if my target is not achieved by me, then who will be the the rest of the people? I mean, who will be the person to achieve my target? I should have, isn't it? It is I will have to achieve my target. If not me, then who will do that target for me? There is nobody, isn't it? There is, in fact, practically nobody. So that is the reason, or that is one of the way in which you can make the government more efficient. That is, there should be a kind of vigilance, or there should be a kind of audit exactly what the workers, the employees perform inside the government. They should not be having a luxurious feeling that even they are not working, they should be paid with a salary. It is just a passive way of enjoying the office or the official work. It is not something that they needs to be considered very serious. That kind of mentality is something which is very much dangerous in the governance part of the country. So there should be payment that is linked to the performance. In other words, you should also be incentivized. Okay, you should also be incentivized. What does it mean? Sir, if I am not being performing well, okay, I am a government officer, say for example, I am a government officer and I am not performing well, means my salary will be deducted. Okay, fine. Sir, if what I perform more, okay, if what I perform more, say for example, if there is a rule that you will have to see, or you will have to go through, you will have to audit 10 files per day. Okay, 10 files per day, and you are so efficient, accurate and fast that you can go through 15 or 20 files per day. So you needs to have that feeling that, okay, fine, if I cross 20, I would be paid more. I would be provided a reward that will be, in fact, having a huge sense of pride amongst other employees of the institutions or the organization. So reward and incentive always promotes the performance. Okay, rewards and incentives, okay, rewards and incentives always promote the performance. Absolutely, there is no doubt, promote the performance. So there should be cutting off salary, as well as there should be, in fact, rewards and incentives for the better quality of work they deliver. Okay, so it is not about the speed, it should be about the quality of work also. Are you understanding? So evaluation of the scheme, that is frequent evaluation of the scheme, and that should even be done by an independent authority. Okay, independent authority, so that there will not be any kind of chances of bias, or practically we can reduce any kind of chances of bias or partisanship. So that we does not want. So evaluation of scheme, that is frequent evaluation of scheme, independent frequent evaluation of scheme, and promotion of merit, as well as payment that is linked to the performance, can boost the efficiency and the effectiveness of the governance. And you would have even heard about zero budgeting. Okay, now what do you mean by zero budgeting? How will you define zero budgeting now? Zero budgeting is something which you may be familiar of. Zero budgeting is fresh evaluation of program from base zero. Say, for example, I'll give you an example. Say in 2024, okay, in 2024, suppose the union government allots, okay, allots 5,000 crore rupees for 100 schools in total. Okay, 100 schools in total. Just for an example. Okay, just for an example, if there are 100 schools in India, those special schools, and the union government, as per the budget, is providing 5,000 crore. In the next year, the union government says that as there are 200 schools now, okay, 200 schools now, we will provide 1,000 crore. Sir, is there a necessity? Is there a necessity? Out of this 200 schools, 500 were, 100 were already been there. Now, is there a necessity that you will have to provide 1,000 crore again? No, isn't it? Exactly 1,000 is not, in fact, a need. Why? Because you have already provided 5,000. So this can be 10,000. Okay, 10,000. Yeah. So you have already provided 5,000 crore for 100 schools in first year. So these 100 schools have already reaped the benefit, isn't it? Now the next year, these 100 schools should not be again given this 5,000 crore. That should be reduced. Why? Because you have already been provided the fund in the last year, in the previous year. So now what needs to be done is you should start from zero budgeting. That means evaluate the situation from the scratch. It should not be on the basis of what you have done on the last year, in the last year. It should start from the scratch. That is, what is the necessity of those 100 schools you have provided the funding in the last year? Is it again 5,000 crore? No, it is something which may be very much reduced. So that need to be the allocation for the new year. But new schools, yes, very good. 5,000 for the new 100 schools. So this is what do you mean by zero budgeting? That means you are starting from the base zero. Okay, so the fresh evaluation from the base zero is what do you mean by zero budgeting. So each and every year, you look for what is the exact situation of those particular allocation of the fund in the last year. And that particular last year, you are getting the account details and you see whether it is having any profit or loss. And if there is any loss, any profit, you are again considering it. And without considering means that is not zero budgeting. You are again pumping in the fund without even considering the reasons for exactly why there is a profit or loss. So such kind of budgeting is what do you mean by zero budgeting. So it is starting from the scratch. You are starting from the scratch. It is not something that you have provided 100 crore or 1,000 crore the last year for 100 schools and you have again been decided that the number of the schools have increased 200. Now we will provide exactly same proportional amount to that particular number of schools. That is not practical. That will unnecessarily wastage of or lead to the wastage of money. What needs to be done is you should start analysis from the start, the scratch. This is what is zero budgeting. Okay, this is one of the efficient, or this is in fact one of the way in which you can make the governance more efficient and effective. Okay, so this is what you need to understand regarding the good governance needs to be made efficient and effective, or the governance needs to be made effective and efficient. Now, the rule of law. Okay, the last feature that we will have to discuss regarding the good governance is the rule of law. Now, see, when you talk about the rule of law, the concept of rule of law, the concept of rule of law has got emanated from Britain, as you know. So these particular term, that is rule of law, was in fact mentioned by different people like Montesquieu, all those kind of individuals, but it was first effectively described by a British jurist. And the British jurist name is A.V. Dicey. Okay, it was A.V. Dicey who has put forward, in fact, explained the idea of rule of law. Okay, it was A.V. Dicey who has explained the idea of rule of law convincingly. Okay, convincingly. Even those people like Montesquieu has tried but was not that successful. It was A.V. Dicey. Now, my dear friends, what you need to understand is that rule of law means it is not rule of men. And what is the difference? What is the difference? Rule of men means, say, for example, if there is a crown or king, okay, the superior authority is king in such a way that the king is the law there, isn't it? It is the rule of king, isn't it? There is no written law. It is that person who is the law, who is the rule. And that is very much dangerous because that person can change the rules, regulations, orders, whips in any kind of manner in which he feels that it is good. And that is not exactly the idea of rule of law. So rule of men means, say, for example, if the country is undemocratic or country is following kingship, that can be regarded as rule of men. Rule of law means in India, it comes to the rule of constitution, which means all are equal before the law, or nobody is beyond the law. This is what is the idea of rule of law. Sir, how does it get connected to the governance part? My dear friends, it gets connected to the governance part in such a way that when the country or the government or when there is a governance which is an element in the society, that should always be following the principle of rule of law. There should not be any difference, my dear friends, there should not be any difference in the application of law because of the reason that this person is very much privileged and this person has huge influence in the government, and thereby we are relaxing the provisions of the criminal laws. No, sir, that is not, that should not be the case. Even the underprivileged should be having the same privilege that a rich person is having. This is what is the idea of rule of law. So in India, rule of law means it is the rule of constitution. That is, all are equal before the constitution. Nobody is beyond the constitution of India. So it is impartial enforcement of laws for the protection of human rights with the respect for law. This is what do you mean by the idea of rule of law. Now, how can the rule of law be ensured? Okay, how can the rule of law be ensured here? Sir, the rule of law can be ensured through judiciary. So judiciary will be always one authority that will be always having a check, an eye on the government, as well as that is the executive, that the judiciary will be always having the mechanisms like the judicial review to keep a check on the government, the executive. Okay, so the judiciary is one of the way by which you can successfully put forward the idea of rule of law. The second one is the reforms in police. Okay, reforms in police. The policing system needs to be reformed in such a way that the officials needs to be having that much consciousness in how to apply the law. So that is exactly what is the idea of rule of law. So it should not be rule of men. That is, there should not be special privileges for anybody because of the reason that that person is highly influential in the government. There should be, in fact, equality before law, equal protection of law. Everybody should be equal. In case of those are underprivileged due to the historical injustice, they should be given some kind of special consideration. That is the, in fact, that is the beauty of the Constitution of India. The Constitution speaks about concept, that is equality before law, equal protection of law. The judiciary will take into consideration what principle needs to be applied. Is it equality before law? Is it equal protection of law? The judiciary will see whether these persons have similar background or a different background. The judiciary will see that is this person a rich and poor, or these persons both are rich. So that is how the special treatment will be categorized by the judiciary. So both ideas, the negative as well as the positive, these ideas have got included in the Constitution of India. So here, what you need to understand is that the rule of law is also a feature of good governance. Okay, so this is what you need to understand in relation to the good governance, the topic of good governance. So what is good governance? Good governance is the manner in which there is efficient utilization of social and economic resources for the development of the country. This is what is the idea of good governance. Okay, good governance, and it was the definition coined by the World Bank. Fine, the World Bank. Now we have discussed about different features of the good governance, that is the governance, the system of government, the way in which the government should be run should be having all these kind of features. Number one should be participatory, accountability, responsibility, transparency, consensus oriented, rule of law, isn't it? Equity and inclusiveness. Then it should be following the idea of what are the remaining things. I have just forgot the name. Yes, efficient and effective, equitable and inclusive. We have said about it. Responsibility, transparency, accountability. Yes, consensus oriented, and finally participate. Yes, we have already said about all these kind of things. So these are the principles of good governance. If these principles are met, you are ideally a good governance oriented state or government. But it is practically not possible. All the countries would be trying to achieve the principles of good governance at their maximum. Okay, so we will hope, or we hope that India would soon be achieving this ideal state of good governance, and that is what our expectation